Good Wednesday afternoon to you. Welcome to the Jon Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. I am so sorry for that, but Jason just did one of his little funny jokes right at the intro there. Good timing, Gaunt. Good timing. But I needed that though. I'll just tell you why. I have to move a cord from one computer to another prior to the start of the show because again we're recording on live video, and I've got a loose cord somewhere and I go to do it, and it doesn't happen all the time, just periodically. And sure enough, it did it again today. And I'm literally, as the intro music's playing, my computer is dead and I'm trying frantically to get everything in front of me. And Jason's like, so why don't we just get a new cord? We can afford to do that.
But hey, with the shutdown today, maybe,
you know what?
We can, right?
Exactly. You just never know what can happen. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Busy day, but
Busy
lots
day.
to talk about. It seems lots to talk about.
Very much so. Very, very much so. And let me tell you exactly what Jason is referring to. What does the government shutdown mean for you and your finances? That's going to be our topic after we go through the market reaction to the government shutdown today. Yesterday, if you missed our show, please pick up our podcast because the boys and I went through what the government shut down. And obviously, we didn't know at that point yesterday if we were going to have it. It looked like it. And sure enough, it did shut down at midnight last night. But what was the impact on the real estate, or what could be the impact on the real estate? Well, now that we have the shutdown in full force, now we got to be talking about your pocketbook. How's it going to impact that? How's it going to impact the stock market? Those of you that are government workers, and so on and so forth. Because Jason, I hate saying this, and I was hesitating before the show started, before my computer died on me, whether I was going to bring this up, but I'm going to do it anyways. And that is, I hate that saying on Wall Street that, history repeats itself, but this time could be different.
Right. Yeah.
And you're hearing that a lot about this government shutdown, that this time could be different, meaning it could be longer than what many are anticipating. Obviously the way the stock market reacted today, and you're like, this is probably going to pass in a couple of days, maybe a week or something. Latest indications, I don't know about you, latest indications I'm seeing right now, they're saying about 2 weeks is about the length of time. I don't know if you've seen anything different on that side of it.
Similar. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the tough part is the market saying, the government being closed, how does it affect Pfizer, right? How does it affect Costco? And
Sure.
That's where, at least near term, reacting for the sake of reacting, having that we've seen this so many times,
Right.
It's been proven to be futile, but also at the same time, what's valuation? How are investors positioned? To your point, could this time be different? Is this really going to be the one where both sides stay firm over whatever thing they've decided is the most important thing to them, and this goes longer than we expect, and then the market will react to it because it'll throw a hissy fit of some kind, and then all of a sudden things will get fixed. So it's just almost like, waiting for the whites of their eyes before you do something dramatic inside of an account, because.
And when you say the market throws a hissy fit, I mean, literally, folks, that's, especially if you're new to the market, the market will do that. It'll get to a point, and who knows where that breaking point is, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, who knows? But the market will get to a point where, like, okay, guys, meaning Washington, guys and gals, enough is enough, right? We already aren't getting non-farm payroll numbers on Friday. That's a very, very important economic report to everybody. But imagine if we went 2 or 3 months without receiving that, along with other important government data that we make our investment decisions on. Yeah, then the market could go, meaning they're going to sell, right? They would start selling this thing off. That would get the politicians' attention and get things moving. But I got to say a kind of an interesting thing. My wife and I were talking about this last night, and I saw it on CNBC this morning. And I love this. I forget who the senator was, but he was a Democrat. And the CNBC host said, so Governor or Senator, there's roughly 800,000, government workers that are going to be furloughed, during this shutdown. And they're not going to get paid until they get back to work. And as I was reading, Jason, going back to, as we'll discuss, the last large government shutdown was 35 days when Trump was in office before. It's not like you come back and there's, the day you show back up to work, your paycheck's deposited in your bank account. They had to wait about a month, meaning the government workers, to get paid, right?
Yeah.
It created a lot of problems. People were falling behind, missed their mortgage payments. I mean, we all know people live paycheck to paycheck. But back to the point. So the CNBC host says, So, Senator, you got these roughly 800 people that aren't going to get their paycheck, 800,000. Are the members of Congress getting paid? And he just dodged the question completely. So they're still somehow getting their paycheck, or at least he didn't
they
say
are.
they weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy from Vermont was on this morning. He said that he was not going to take a paycheck
That was the
during that
one. That
window
was
of
from
time.
Vermont. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
he did say he
I'm
was
not going
going
to
to
take it. Ooh,
not take
thanks.
it. Yeah, right. Again, but I will read a book later.
Right.
But
Exactly.
yeah, but it is. It's a sea of unknown. And I think near term, the market reacted to a weaker than expected ADP number today,
Yes.
in the sense that, hey, the Fed will come to our rescue and continue to lower rates. And that's why we saw the market react the way it did today. But sans bad news that equals good news tomorrow, the next day, et cetera, I don't think it'll react the same way.
Well, we were pretty negative in the pre-market session. I mean, I'm looking at my notes. My first update at 5:23 this morning with Ross, so we were down 156 on the Dow futures. And here we closed in record territory, not by much, 43 points, but it did again start to weaken a bit. And it kind of spent most of the pre-market right there, right around that negative 130 to 150 range. So it was. I think it was testing the waters a little bit to see if the bears would come out of hibernation and start driving things a little bit lower.
Yeah, and again, I think it's rates, right? I think that the fact that bonds moved the way they did, and that weaker negative jobs number for ADP, which I know is your favorite statistic, ADP.
It really is so accurate.
Yeah, it's incredibly accurate. Like throwing, like throwing watermelons. Yeah, but it's at least was, I think, the one of the catalysts that at least had folks thinking that, okay, well, the Fed will always be there over the next month or so to bail things out by continuing to lower rates.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to go through the stock market recap. Again, it was a good day today, record-setting day for the Dow and the S&P. But first thing we're going to start the show with after we go through the market side of things is, how has the market historically reacted in previous government shutdowns? So we got some stats for you we want to share, because I know a lot of you are concerned, like, oh boy, I need to take defensive action in my portfolio. Well, again, as I said a moment ago, is history going to repeat itself, meaning the market's not going to go down? Or, as some are saying, is it different this time? And then we're going to get into your personal side of life as far as what you need to be doing with your portfolio, because it is. And especially if you are, a government worker furloughed, or a contractor to the government where you're not furloughed, you're just you're not working, you're not getting a paycheck in some cases. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. So why don't you take it away on that, my friend, and let's go back and recap exactly in some details what happened today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that big sector of the S&P, healthcare, helped quite a bit. Pfizer strong, Lilly, Thermo Fisher, Biogen. Yeah, those names all did quite well, 6 to 10% higher across the board. That helped the S&P quite a bit. Why you see it was stronger than the Dow, just because there's not as many healthcare constituents inside of there. But I very much takeaway think that the fact that ADP that came in with a loss of 32,000 jobs versus an expectation of plus 40,000 and a broadly inline PMI, which didn't at least strike itself as too inflationary, was at least the mix of good enough to have the market stare through any concern near term about what the government's doing. VIX is at 16, so we're at neutral. We're not complacent, but we're certainly not freaked out about anything. So I think that's a notable takeaway, that the market's not pricing in any sort of panic right now, which it has on other shutdowns. And sometimes that's smart to at least see where the bettors are betting. And if you don't see a VIX at 20 or 22, that probably at least means that odds are near term, nothing to freak out about. Again, I can talk about both sides of my mouth and say sometimes the right time to freak out is when no one's freaking out. So that'll be one to watch too. So watching volatility, I'm going to be squarely focused on. And, overseas markets, European markets were up, 80 to 90 basis points. Asia was stronger. So people are just rotating, right? And continuing to rotate, sort of as we've seen throughout the year, away from US, and it doesn't hurt you to do so. So I think that's a lot of, at least near term, while the market says, hey, I can go other places, and then come back to the US once things calm down a little bit.
There you go. There you go. Let's go back to the healthcare sector and give you a little bit more details, because I did not get a chance to really discuss this much yesterday. But some of you may have seen this or heard about this before. That yesterday the president announced what's called Trump RX, which is a government-run platform to lower drug costs. Now, under this initiative, Pfizer, as Jason just mentioned, has agreed to reduce their Medicaid prices and invest $70 billion in U.S. R&D in exchange for a 3-year tariff reprieve. So that stock, again, had a very strong day, as Jason alluded to, 6.89% gain, up $1.76 to $27.23. So, we'll see if that, excitement wears off here, going forward, or this may be, because the healthcare obviously has lagged significantly this year.
Big time.
Be able to move things around. Lilly was another big mover. I'm just looking at the quotes, 8.22% gain, up $62.71, 825.71. Thermo Fisher, 9.5% gain. Biotech, Biogen, up 10.09%. So once again, the whole sector was strong. Now, also helping the Dow today, Nike, right? Surprised everybody. This company has just really turned things around with new management. Dow Component, that reported earnings after the close yesterday. Pretty good numbers across the board. Stock rose 6.46%, $4.50 rise to 74.24, again, to help the Dow out. Other than that,
real quick, sorry, with healthcare, if you're looking at the healthcare sector, I'm looking at the ETF that tracks it right now. If it's about 8.3% it still has before it gets back to its highs, right? So if the S&P is trading at its highs and you're trying to play some relative games, healthcare could be a good spot. We've talked about biotech, et cetera, but healthcare's got a lot of room to the upside if, in fact, you're thinking that you see some rotation versus your tech sectors and things like that are very much overbought and at their highs. So that's a decent reason why you avoid a sector and all of a sudden you miss a big move in trying to at least be overly weighted to momentum.
And hence, again, the reason for a diversified portfolio. A little bit of a lot, as the saying goes. And let's wrap it up with Jason, with Tesla. Strong day today, $14.69 gain, 3.3%, closed at $459.41. They're going to be reporting deliveries tomorrow for the third quarter, and many analysts are expecting that to be a very strong number. So that'll be a nice little turnaround if that happens. So stock bid up ahead of that. All right, we come back, we'll hit the commodities real quick, interest rates, et cetera. Then we're going to get into, first of all, how has the market performed historically when we are in a government shutdown? Then we're going to get into many details, our shutdown checklist, et cetera. But first, let's turn it to Kristen Snow. She's in the Right Now Traffic Center. Hello, Kristen. Welcome back to the Jon Sanchez Show on Newstalk 780 KOH with Jason Gaunt. Once again, we finished up 43 on the Dow. That was a close of 46,441. Again, a record finish. NASDAQ higher by 95.42% to a close of 22,755. S&P up 23 points, 0.34% to a level of 6,711. Also a record close there. All right, on the commodity side, we finished down 58 cents on oil, 61.79 a barrel. I'm just waiting till I can say 50 something on oil, Jason.
Did it get there today?
No, I don't know if we did intraday. I got to pull up a chart, but 24.40 gain, $24.40 gain in gold. She's on a tear, 3,897.80 an ounce is our closing level there. And over to the bond market side of things, down 4 basis points on the 10-year to 4.1% close on that. My goodness, just getting attractive there. But as poor Dwight said, what good's it going to do? You can't get any mortgages done right now because the government shut down. So he was a little frustrated yesterday. He didn't say it, but you could see it in his face. He was, I don't blame him. I mean, anybody, it's being affected by that. It's like, I can't get tax transcripts, and then there's some government entities open that he deals with, and some that are closed. And it's just, he texted me this morning. He's like, this is just not good, not fun. All right, so let's get down to our topic this afternoon, which again is, what does the government shutdown mean for you in your portfolio, your personal life, et cetera? So we want to start off with a I'll call it a big misconception, because again, I had this discussion with a client just about an hour or so ago, and they, people think that the market is always going to sell off in a government shutdown. And I think, Jason, you and I went through some of these numbers, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I remember it was a while back, but it's a good time to kind of refresh everybody. So let's go back to the last major government shutdown. So as I said earlier, that was back from the period of December 21st of 2018 through January 25th of 2019. Okay. So it was about 35 days overall. But what we care about are trading days. So it was 22 trading days. The average return on the S&P 500 on a day-by-day basis, 0.47%. Isn't that amazing? Almost a 0.5% average on the S&P 500. But if we tally up those 22 trading days when the government was shut down, 10.43% return. That's not bad, my friend.
The market likes it when they're closed.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Let's go back to earlier in 2018. I'd actually, until I dug up this data, I actually forgot we had 2 of those shutdowns in 2018. January 19th of 2018 through January 22nd of 2018. There's only 2 trading days there. S&P rose 0.81%. 95, we had 5 trading days during the shutdown there, a 1.36% gain. 95, we had 14 trading day close for 14 trading days, just a fraction of a percent. And then in 2013, that wasn't bad, closed for 14 days and up 3.17%. So, and then again, those are trading days. So overall, market, like you said, doesn't mind. Take it away. Why doesn't the market mind then the government shutdown?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's probably just circumspect. A lot of times it sells off into it too, right? And then sort of buy the news, sell the rumor, or whatever the heck you want to call it. I think that's part of reasons too, right? That people start to expect the worst, and then when it doesn't happen, as they're getting slowly more excitement that something is going to get cured, you tend to see strength on the way out. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. And again, I don't think near term it matters a whole heck of a lot as far as company earnings are concerned, right? Maybe a Palantir, for example, and that is a way out right field shot there, but who gets a lot of their income from the government over time could really suffer because that's lots of days they don't get paid. But does Walmart really matter if the government's shut? Like, does it? I'm sure you could make some bank shots as to why it will hurt them marginally, but it doesn't really affect their business. It's just
well, I think we saw a little bit of that today. You saw the banks a bit weak. JP Morgan's second worst performer. Home Depot was the worst performer of the Dow, down a little over $8. There are some strategists out there that are going, if this thing extends for any period of time, again, as I said at the beginning of the show, you've got government workers, contractors, and whoever else may be impacted by a quasi long-term government shutdown. They don't have the consumer discretionary funds now to go to a Home Depot or borrow money from a JP Morgan or something like that. So there's always that school of thought also.
No, that's fair. That's I forget the number that we saw of people that worked for the Fed, right? Some astronomical number, but there's clearly a lot of folks. But remember, everyone doesn't get laid off to, or furloughed, quote unquote. Like, it's just, again, a matter of how sensitive and how long it ends up being. I was surprised by that 10% number that you gave there too. But until it becomes a big deal, this just seems like the same old thing that we always deal with these, not my favorite group of people.
Yeah. I know I felt stupid this morning. Ross and I were talking about when I was doing the stock updates, and I said, tomorrow we're going to have this. Again, we don't have the non-farm payroll numbers on Friday. And I went, actually, Russ, I don't know what we're going to have tomorrow, right? Because other than ADP, I can't think of really any report off the top of my head that we get that doesn't have the government, clause into it in some form or fashion. So we may not get anything. I mean, we got a pretty good calendar tomorrow, but again, may not get anything. And once again, how long can that go on? So there's a lot of reasons, but the most important takeaway of this segment is the market. Again, we tested it for 35 days, 22 trading days in that last shutdown. That was the longest one. And the market did just fine. Again, as I opened the show with, could this time be different? Only time will tell. Now, when we come back, here's one other thing that we got to be thinking about as far as your portfolios and so on and so forth. And that is the president's comments today, and some economic as well as political strategists saying that he will use, and he made some comments his press secretary made some comments in the White House just a few hours ago indicating, guess what? It may not just be the furloughs. They could be using this as an excuse, quote, quote, air quotes, to permanently rid the government of hundreds of thousands of jobs. Now, that's a whole different story there. So we'll cover that as we continue talking about what does this government shutdown mean to the market, your portfolio, your personal life. Let's turn it over to Jack Saban. He's got news, traffic, and weather. Hello, Jack. Welcome back to the Jon Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH with Jason Gaunt. Once again, we finished up 43 on the Dow, a 95-point gain on the NASDAQ, and a 22-point rise on the S&P 500. Again, a record close for the Dow and the S&P 500. All right, now, we just went over how the market historically reacts in a government shutdown. Again, government shutdown at midnight last night. Today was our first day. Obviously, the market didn't care too much about it. And we just shared with you once again that last government shutdown lasting 35 days, calendar days, 22 trading days. We gained a little over 10% average, or a little over 10% over that 22 days of trading. But now, again, is this time going to be different? What do you need to be doing, thinking about for your portfolio, et cetera? So I want to kind of go back to some of the basics here. I've been talking to a lot of people today, Jason, and they're like, what really is behind this? Trying to get an idea how long this thing is going to last. So we're not a political show, so I'm not going to, point fingers one way or the other. But, in summary, basically what the problem is the Democrats have remained very, very united. We needed 5 more of their votes to get this passed, right? To get the budget passed. Well, we missed it. They tried voting again this morning, I guess, and missed it again. So I don't think they're real far off, but, only time will tell. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a funding bill, meaning the Democrats, to go through only if it includes some policy changes that they want. Now, what are these policy changes? So their primary, but again, it's not the only demand, has been to have subsidies for healthcare plans through Obamacare extended before they expire at the end of this year. Now, Republicans have said, nope, sorry, no way, it's not going to happen. They've refused to concede, and that, of course, is why we are now in a government shutdown with, really no end in sight. So it's coming down to the healthcare side of things. I know the list is a mile long for other reasons, but if you kind of just focus on that, say, okay. And Jason's kind of remarkable. Again, we're talking about how strong the healthcare sector was today. And here it's kind of at the crux of the problem. And healthcare is one of the best performers today. But on a light note, though, I want all of you to rest assured that there's going to be one aspect or one area of the White House that is not going to be slowing down. You want to take a shot at what that may be, Jason?
No, I'm excited. Tell me.
Well, we no longer have a rose garden.
Oh,
because
yes.
The president, of course, has now broken ground on his new ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that may have been concerned that there may be a delay in the ballroom, according to the White House today, quote, there will not be a stoppage of ballroom work when the shutdown occurs. Now, what's this ballroom?
Good.
Well, Trump signed an executive order not too long ago, back in July, calling for the construction in the beautiful Rose Garden of a 90,000 square foot, ornately designed and carefully crafted event space that could host as many as 650 guests. Kind of cool. It's like having your own convention center right out your front door there.
Yeah.
The renderings that have been released suggest that the ballroom is going to dwarf the White House in size. But why isn't, if this is government property, why isn't the construction stopping there? Well, because the funds for the ballroom reportedly have come from private donors and are not tied to the budget standoff that, again, is affecting the rest of the government. So
can we talk about that?
Let's do it.
Private donors?
Private donors.
What's that mean?
Private donors.
Right. So private donors are donating to build a ballroom for the Trump ballroom or whatever it's going to be called.
Got it.
Okay. And that's totally on the.
And that's the same group that, donated, I'm sure I don't know who the donors are, but I'm speculating.
Yeah.
A lot of the same multi-billionaires, corporations, et cetera, that donated massive amounts to the campaign.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my guess.
Perfect.
I'm sure at some point we'll find out who the donors are, but yeah, that's why. Okay. I know. You shake your head. Maybe they'll give them a brick, like at UNR. You can buy a brick, when they do new construction.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Donate towards it.
Maybe a brick for $5 billion.
Yeah, $5 billion, something like that. That's right.
It's interesting. It just reminds me of what I see from like oligarchs of the past, right? Like these opulence, right? All the gold, and whether it was like gold that was bought at Pier 1 or whatever, but like it's all this like glitzy gold. It's just I don't know. That's the part I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Like them or not. I just like trying to change the view of the role or something as president, right?
That's a good podcast title.
It's gone cyclical, right? Where some presidents try to be more man of the people and others sort of move other directions. So let's
do a podcast on that. Speaking of podcasts, I invite all of you to go to our podcasting site, Podcasters of America. We recorded a great podcast with Dr. Sanchez on Monday on AI. We really turned out to be an hour and a half podcast, but great information there. Now, when can we expect the next vote? It's not going to happen tomorrow. Senators are off tomorrow for Yom Kippur, so no meeting is going to happen. Then they're going to come back on Friday and Saturday for continued negotiations and potentially more voting. So we got a couple of days where nothing's going to happen. Now, as I told you before we went to break, here's the other issue that at some point, especially if it comes to fruition, again, everything is fluid right now. If it comes to fruition, this could spark a little bit of nervousness in the market. Today, the president's budget chief, Russell Vought, told House Republicans that the administration will start firing federal employees. I didn't say furlough. I said firing federal employees in the next 1 to 2 days. That's according to NBC News. Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt, of course, she confirmed the layoffs are, quote, imminent.
Wow, these lines are amazing. A lot of good can come from shutdowns, Trump said.
Let me get to that. That's the best. That's the president's quote. Let me finish with his cabinet first.
I will not steal your thunder.
Yeah. So this is a first quote. The president has directed his cabinet and the Office of Management and Budget. Jason's like rubbing his neck right now. It's stressing him out with this. The president has directed his cabinet and the Office of Management and Budget that they are working with agencies across the board to identify where cuts can be made, Levitt told the reporters. And we believe that layoffs are imminent. Now, prior to the shutdown, Vought issued a memo that threatened mass firings. Again, folks, I'm not saying furloughs. I'm saying firings. Threatened mass firings, writing that federal agencies would be directed to consider, quote, reduction in force notices for all employees in defunded programs, projects, or activities not deemed, quote, consistent with the president's priorities. Okay. Now, as what Mr. Gaunt was just saying a moment ago, at a White House event yesterday, the president framed the shutdown as an opportunity. So listen closely, folks, to what I'm saying, because this may be a hint that he is in no hurry for this shutdown to end. So listen closely. So he framed the shutdown as a, quote, opportunity to get rid of a lot of things we didn't want, adding that they'd be Democrat things. Didn't know they'd was a word, but they'd would be different Democrat things. Quote from the president. A lot of good can come down from shutdowns, he said. When you shut it down, you have to do layoffs. So we'd be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected. And they're Democrats. They're going to be, they're Democrats. They're going to be Democrats. When I read that, I sat back and I went, okay, if I was a government employee and I'm a diehard Republican but I got my department, my agency or whatever got, creamed in a permanent shutdown. How do you know that they're all Democrats? They're he calls them Democrat departments. I don't understand how.
Yeah.
But this scares me, Jason. I mean, we don't know the size. I mean, I've seen some guesstimates that it could be a couple 100,000 people permanently after this furlough ends, or simultaneously, a couple 100,000 people permanently have lost their government job.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's spot on I don't think there's just I guess we could probably riff on what areas we think are just full of Democrats as far as government agencies, but it's, sort of in line with a lot of people who pushed back against BlackRock, right? Saying, woke and this and that. And, I'm like, safe to say the biggest financial institution, at least on the money management side, is not all Democrats, right? So you could certainly have some baby, right? A lot of conservative, but you could see some baby with the bathwater type stuff for sure. Right. But again, if you're Trump, that's just threatening, saying, look, fine, you can drag your feet. I'm just going to fire a bunch of your people until the point that they all get really sad and then come yelling and crying to you, and then you have to backpedal. So,
yesterday
it's a negotiating tactic for sure.
It is. And that's why I'm bringing this up. We don't know how much of it's true. My gut tells me it's not a threat. I have a feeling he's going to do it. We saw what happened with Doge when Musk was there, right? They don't hesitate to get rid of a couple 100,000 people. So if he can look at it that way, my heart tells me I think it's very, very true. I'm going to tell you what two labor unions just did yesterday that represent the federal workers. They're taking it very serious. All right, how this government shutdown is affecting you? We'll come back and continue that discussion. Let's wrap it up with Kristen Snow right now, Traffic Center. Hello, Kristen. Welcome back to the Jon Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH with Jason Gaunt. Once again, we finished up 43 on the Dow, 95-point gain on the NASDAQ, and up 23 on the S&P. Once again, a record close for the Dow and the S&P 500. All right, we've been discussing what the government shutdown means for you and your finances. Once again, from the stock market perspective, don't change anything based upon your assumption of the government shutdown. Again, historically, the market does just fine, at least at this point. Obviously, you need to tune into the show every day, and we'll keep you updated if things change. Now, what we're talking about is something that could be, a little bit of the fly in the ointment, and that is what the president said yesterday, where, they're proposing permanently getting rid of, hundreds of thousands is what this I've seen. I don't know how accurate that is, but a whole bunch of people permanently using the government shutdown as basically the excuse. Now, I told you that a couple labor unions are getting involved. Before I do that, I want to tell you what some of the critics of this threat by the president, if it is a threat, not something of reality, a couple of the critics are accusing the administration of using the shutdown as a pretext for the cuts that he wanted to make anyways. This is according to the Progressive Center of Budget and Policy Priorities. They said, look, a shutdown provides no new legal authority to engage in mass layoffs, nor does it provide any sound management or policy reason to do so. So now let's go back to the labor union, Jason. So on Tuesday, two labor unions that represent federal workers sued the administration over its mass layoff threats. Now, the lawsuit accused the White House of the, quote, cynical use of federal employees as a pawn in congressional deliberations, noting that under the current law, quote, all employees who are not paid during a shutdown, whether furloughed or accepted, must receive back pay for that time period once the funding is reinstated. In response, Republicans have argued that the White House can fire whoever it wants during a shutdown. According to Mike Johnson, he said the following, of course, the speaker, it provides an opportunity. And he left it at that. It provides an opportunity. So you see what I'm saying? We again, this is the fun part with Trump. You try to read in between the lines and you go, okay, the Speaker of the House is saying it provides an opportunity. Trump's saying, every person he wants to get rid of is just going to be a Democrat, which we know that's not true. So this is something we have to watch, because I bet my bottom dollar if tomorrow we wake up and I'm just going to do a hypothetical, couple 100,000 layoffs or elimination of positions are announced, it's going to have an impact on the market, especially after today's week.
Couldn't he do it anyway? Like, why?
Well, that's kind of what they're saying, that he can, under executive authority, like they said, the White House said he can fire whoever it wants during a shutdown. But they said during a shutdown. So I don't know, according to the labor union, that's why they filed the lawsuits yesterday. He can't just do it, whether it's in a government shutdown or not. So I don't know the answer to that, but all he has to do is create a executive order, which maybe he already has in one of the many hundreds or thousands that he can. I don't know. It's just starting to find its way, into the news wires at this point. So latest number, 750,000 government employees are going to be furloughed. Here's another interesting economic statistic also. That last shutdown I was mentioning back in 2018 and 2019 for 35 days, it cost the government $400 million in wages per day, according to the CBO, which, okay. But I saw a bigger statistic yesterday that it impacts 1/10 of GDP. For every day the government is shut down, the GDP has to be reduced by 0.1% per week. So it can have an overall economic impact, right? And again, back to looking at the overall economy.
Yeah, Fed cutting rates, right? So maybe job closures get you even more rate cuts.
That's right.
Sooner.
And that's what I thought about that also. Again, back to the president, just trying to read in between the lines. Maybe he's not in a hurry to get this shutdown over with, because again, it'll weaken the jobs market more. He'll have more ammunition to point fingers at the Fed to say, don't give me a 0.25% cut or give the economy, give it a half, right? Look at the jobs market's a mess now. We're losing hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? Doesn't that make sense?
Darn Democrats causing all this strife.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. 90% of the EPA staff is out of work during the shutdown. About 5% of Department of Homeland, compared to just 5% of the Department of Homeland Security workers that are being furloughed. CNN reported today also that the Small Business Administration sent, quote, suggested language for workers. I thought about you because you always send when you're out of office, you send that, you put up that email.
Right.
So the Small Business Association sent a suggested language for workers to use in their out of office messages. Quote, I am out of the office for the foreseeable future because the Senate Democrats voted to block a clean federal funding bill, leading to a government shutdown, the language reads. Over at the Housing and Urban Development Department, the EPA and the Department of Veteran Affairs, their email says, quote, radical left, congressional Democrats, and radical liberals, respectively, is the reason for that they're out of office. So
I'm going to change my out of office for next time.
I know, I thought about you.
Something will be radical, I promise.
There you go. Yeah, Jon's gone radical. I'm out. All right, my friend. Great job as always. We'll do it again tomorrow on the Jon Sanchez Show. Don't miss it. Take care.